So I thought it'd be fun to do a video recreating the bass line from Depeche Mode's classic track Enjoy the Silence, which was done with the legendary Roland System 700. Let's take a look. In 1989, Depeche Mode were beginning work on what was to become their 7th studio album, Violator. And in the years preceding this album, they'd come up with quite a tight procedure in how they went about producing records, and they decided that this album was the opportunity to break that paradigm. A major part of that was limiting the pre-production and pre-programming so that they were free to take a song in any number of directions they felt like in the studio without the baggage of existing work. And Enjoy the Silence is a case in point. Martin Gore's original demo, which has since been released, is just sustained chords on a keyboard and a solo vocal, and it's basically a ballad. Now, Alan Wilder and producer Mark Ellis, better known as Flood, pushed to try and arrange the song in a kind of up-tempo pseudo-disco style. Gore was reticent but let them experiment, and they got the drums going on an Akai S1000 and then made that amazing bass line on Flood's System 700. Still unsure, Gore was persuaded to come up with a top line which he wrote on a synthesizer but then re-recorded with a guitar, and from there they added PPG Wave, EMU emulators 2 and 3, and of course Gahan and Gore's vocals, and the song we all know and love came together, and it's become one of Depeche Mode's biggest hits. Okay, so let's try and recreate the sound. Now, what they had was the sequencer, which I don't have, and the keyboard. The sequencer was providing the gates that go to the envelope generators. The voltage registers were being used to sequence the filter, and then the keyboard's CV was being used to control the oscillator pitch. So someone was sat there pressing the keys on the keyboard as it ran along to play the bass line, basically. So in place of the sequencer, which I don't have, I've got a Roland MPU 101 MIDI to CV box. I've got CVs going to the oscillators and also coming via this mixer to the filter. So I've got a keyboard CV in place of the person who was pressing the keys. I've got gates, and then I've got another CV, a velocity CV, which is velocity to control voltage, which is going to the filter in place of the voltage registers. So it should be running. So if we turn up an oscillator, there we go. So that's oscillator 1, it's a square wave. Okay? And then oscillator 2, another square wave up the octave. And then I think there's a third oscillator tuned up a fifth, but blended in. So you're mainly hearing oscillator 1, but there are 3 oscillators going on, I believe. Those are going through the filter, which we'll set up into the VCA. And the VCA's got a really tight envelope generator, so minimum attack time, really short decay of like 100 milliseconds, lowest sustain level, and then about a 50 millisecond release. So let's set up the filter. So let's close it. Now we can't hear anything. And then we're going to turn up the resonance a little bit to about 2. We don't want, if I just play with it, we don't want like that. We want a much more subtle amount of filter resonance. So let's leave that there for now. 2 things are modulating the filter, I think. So first is this envelope generator, which is set basically completely flat. And can you hear it makes a little click? A little splat. That is definitely in there. So I think it has to be coming from the envelope generator, basically. And then more important than that, of course, is that sequencing of the filter. So set that up, coming in maybe about there somewhere. If I just take that click out, put it back in, too much, somewhere about there. And I've got via this mixer a touch of keyboard CV as well. Maybe too much resonance. That's better. That is very close. Now there's many variables. You know, all these are continuously variable controls. And you know, what were the values on the sequencer? You could spend your life working out exactly what that was. But this is basically the sound. So as ever, the point of this video is not so that you can go and set up this exact sound on your Roland System 700, because that would be applicable to about 1 person who's watching this video. The point is to understand the principle of how this kind of sound is made so that you can make your own version of it with your own synthesizers for use in the context of your music. So to that end, Let's do a little spin on it based on the ARP 2600 and sequencer. What about another twist with a Korg MS-20 and a sequencer? And what about with software with a mini monster? So what you need: oscillators, resonant low-pass filter, amp, envelopes, and a way to sequence the filter cutoff on a per-step basis. That could be software, that could be hardware, that could be absurdly expensive, it could be dirt cheap, it could be anywhere in between. You should be able to get hold of something that can do some kind of sound like this. But if you do absolutely love the sound of the System 700, then I have multi-sampled it. That is available on my Patreon. Huge thank you to my patrons for their ongoing support. Thank you to you for watching. The last thing I'm going to do is my own cover version of Enjoy the Silence with Clemens Wenners on vocals. Cheers.
Like violence, break the silence, come crashing into my little world. Painful to me, pierce right through me. Can't you understand? Oh, my little girl. All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. Words are very unnecessary. They can only do harm. Vows are spoken to be broken, feelings are intense, words are trivial, pleasures remain, so does the pain. Words are meaningless and forgettable. All I ever wanted